And welcome back, everybody. It is Monday, June the 10th, and we're here on the Catholic Convert Show. Now, you may notice that I am all by my lonesome today. That's because Ed had something going on and he wasn't going to be able to make it, and we couldn't figure out any kind of rescheduling that worked for the both of us. So I decided I'd fly it solo today. But that's all right, because we've still got some cool stuff on this show. At least I think it's cool. I'm gonna go ahead and warn you, I'm feeling pretty beat this morning. This past weekend at my parish, it was the first ever father-son hike that the men's group that me and my friend John founded at our parish decided to launch. Now, most people think that every single church out there has a very active women's group, very active men's group, things like that. But you'd be surprised at how little there is at a lot of Catholic churches. Now, I'm not saying there aren't, tons of different ministries or things like that. But one thing I have to give credit to Protestants for is they seem way better than us Catholics at the social aspect of their parishes. Now, I'm saying this from an outside observer point of view, because at my parish, it's very, every parish member is very involved in the church for the most part. We have numerous ministries at the church. We've got numerous social-esque events, whether it's a Marian art show, whether it's some festival or a feast day potluck. And, us Catholics have a feast day every day. So it's not like we have to wait for another holiday or anything to come around. But one of the things that I noticed when I first joined my parish, it was back in May 2023. And I remember we went to Mass that Sunday. I believe it was May 8th. And the rest of that week, I was telling my wife, hey, I saw in the bulletin, they've got a Bible study. So, I've got a Bible. I've been reading the Bible every day, every night before I go to bed. So why don't I go check it out and see what's going on there, because I meet more people in the parish. She's like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I think it was on a Tuesday night, and I went down there, and I was surprised that when I went in, there were, let's say, a dozen or so guys there. And I was the youngest guy there, and I'm almost 40. I would say there was one guy who was probably in his 40s, but everyone else that was there, 60 years old or up. And now they're all nice guys. I've befriended all of them in the year that I've been at the parish. But the one thing that kind of struck me was it's got to be a bit of a common problem for things like that. Like, how do you get a younger generation? And I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm talking about guys who are in their 20s to, I'm going to call it, late 30s, right? How do you get people like that to be interested in coming to church outside of Sundays just to be around and fellowship and hang out with people of their parish? It's something that the Protestant churches do very well, because you see all these, hey, we took our Sunday school class and we went to this mountain range, and we went skiing, or we went hiking, or we went on whatever kind of trip. And they're very involved in that. But I wasn't seeing, and again, I only went to the one because that was the last one for the year, because they were going to close it up for the summer, because it's ran by all volunteers. And apparently it's kind of like how how a school year runs, because we do have a school at our church, and I believe one of the catechists was the guy running it. And so they take the summers off just like teachers do at public schools. But I was noticing, like I said, I'm the youngest guy there. And why aren't there more people my age? Because when we went to Mass, I saw several dozen guys, some single, some with wives and kids that were around my age bracket, and didn't see them there. And yeah, it could have been a one off, but the more I attended Mass, which was obviously every week, I started noticing that the most involved people were older people, minimum 55 and older. But especially when it came to men, there were a lot more younger women who were very involved in the parish. Lack of a better word here, extracurriculars, right? But when it came to the men's, they had the men's Bible study. They have a men's breakfast once every month or once every 2 weeks, something like that, where people meet up at a Denny's. And it's the same thing. Everyone there is of a much older demographic. And I wanted to figure out how we could get people my age, or at least around my age, a little more fired up. So a couple of months went by, and my wife and I were looking through our parish bulletin, and we saw that we have a library. I'm like, oh, we have a library on campus. The whole campus is about 9 or 10 different buildings, including the church. And so I was like, you know what? After Mass, they say the library opens at 10. Let's go down there, check it out, see what kind of books they've got, because there's going to be some stuff for the kids for them to read, stuff for me and my wife to read. So we went down there, and I met this guy named John, who is kind of in charge of running the library. And it's in the same building where the Knights of Columbus meet for their meetings. So he and I got to talking, and he's, I want to say 5 years older than me. So right in the same bracket. And we were talking about, who I am. I introduced myself, I introduced my family, told me a little bit of his backstory, and we hit it off pretty well. And over the next couple of weeks, we started talking a little bit, shooting each other text messages, meeting up before and after Mass, going over to the library for coffee, because that was one of the features is come to the library after Mass, you get free coffee, you could hang out with other parishioners, get to know each other. And he and I sat down one day. It was my wife was there, my kids were there, but there was no one else in the library. No one was taking advantage of it. And the parish has been there for several years. And by the way, it's not like that every Sunday. And it wasn't like that every Sunday. I'm not trying to say that, I walked in and changed everything. I didn't. But there was a very hit or miss kind of consistency when it came to people going over to the library, hanging out with the other parishioners and things like that. So he and I were talking about it, and I said, what if we tried to do something here? Because I explained to him what was going on and going through my head, rather, with the Bible study I went to. Not very many people my age. By not many, I mean I was the only one. And he agreed. And the way I saw it was, it's really hard to get the guy who's got a wife, a job, kids, all these responsibilities, to give him an incentive to go to his church outside of a Sunday, to be around other people that are his age and say, other guys. If the agenda is, for example, hey, we're going to meet at the parish and we're going to do a Bible study. Bible studies are awesome. I read my Bible every day. But to be quite frankly, Bible studies are not a huge draw for guys with wives, kids, families. They're like, oh, I've got other stuff to do. My wife wants to do this. I can cook out on the grill. I can do whatever. And I get it. And for me, the parish is like a 40-minute drive from my house. So I said, what if we set up something? We create a men's group. But before we launch the men's group thing, let's try to see if we can get a big draw of guys to come up here to the parish for the sole purpose of an agendaless meetup. No agenda. We're not here for a rosary procession. We're not here for adoration. We're not here for worship. We're not here for a Bible study or a Knights of Columbus meeting or a fraternist meeting. Not for any of those things. We're just going to show up and hang out, have a good time, get to know each other. And we can start there, use it as a foundation, and see what comes of it. So he agreed, and we ran the notice in the bulletin. It was the event was coming up in November of last year, and the agenda was show up, bring meat, bring a cooler of beer or a couple of bottles of scotch, whatever. Bring cigars, bring your pipe tobacco, and we're going to build a giant fire, sit in the woods behind the campus on some chairs and logs, and we're going to have a good time, talk, get to know each other. And we were like, all right, this is either going to have a really big turnout or it's going to have zero turnout, and we'll be sitting there grilling in the woods by ourselves. Well, the night of the event came, and there were, I want to say, between 50 and 60 guys showed up. Some brought their sons. We got there around 7 o'clock that night. Well, it officially started at 7 that night, but it didn't end until almost 11 o'clock. So many guys showed up, brought their sons. We had 4 grills running. I even told the parish priest, get some of the deacons and yourself all come by. So, we're all men. We can all just talk to each other as men, because there's a very formal kind of atmosphere and environment when you're meeting up at your parish for something, parish related versus, we're just hanging out. I'm standing there talking with my priest. We're laughing. We're talking over a couple of drams of scotch. Guys in the back are with in the background behind us, they're throwing steaks on the grill, throwing burgers on the grill, hot dogs on the grill. They're, throwing back a few cold ones, smoking cigars. The deacons are over here laughing, joking with the other parishioners. And it was a really great time. And the feedback from that was incredible. We had so many people say, hey, we all need to do this again. What kind of other events can we all go and do together? And so I knew that we were on the right track. Now, obviously, we didn't completely avoid anything faith related. There were some very theologically relevant discussions going on. We blessed the food, normal things, but we didn't center theology or ministry as the agenda, because those things can happen organically when you have 2 people or 50 people of the same faith hanging out and talking. Hey, which mass do you go to? Because my parish does 3 masses every Sunday. And there's people that have been going to the same parish for over a decade as each other, and they don't know each other's first names, because one guy might go to the 8 a.m. mass, one guy might go to the 10 a.m. mass, and then someone else is going to the 12 p.m. mass. So it's a huge parish. We've got like 2,300 families in the parish. It has to be split across those 3 masses, as well as the daily masses that people go through during the week. And so they didn't know each other's names, even though they've been attending the same parish for over a decade. Hey, I've never met you. Are you new here? No, I've been coming here for 20 years. You? I've been coming here for 30 years. Nice to meet you for the first time ever. But again, like I was saying, we had such a positive feedback come in about how much fun everybody had and how great it was to just be able to sit down and have a conversation with the priest without one, it's not confession, it's not a homily, it's not a Bible study. We're just talking like men to each other about our lives, about our jobs, about our families, about hobbies, whatever. It was organic conversation and it was absolutely amazing. So we went ahead and decided immediately, my friend John and I, we need to come up with a name for this thing. And so we went straight for Estovere, which is a Latin for be a man. And the premise behind that is it's supposedly the last thing that King David ever told Solomon before King David passed away. Be a man. And quite apt. Everybody loved the name. We kept the group as Estovere. And one of the very next things we did in December, took that whole month off of doing any kind of meetups, except for we'll just show up, we'll grill out over here on a weekend because it's Advent season. It's busy. Parish that big. We have so many things going on. So we kind of chilled out and just, we're going to cook some burgers, hang out, talk, and then leave. It was like a 2-hour show up, eat, leave kind of thing. January came around and I had picked out a spot at one of the local hiking trails. We're going to go up to the summit of this mountain with a big group of guys. Very cool turnout then too. Everybody loved it. And the following months after that, it was just, hey, we'll meet up. Hey, we'll hang out. Holy Week came around. So pretty much the entire month that we were anticipating Easter, we didn't do anything. Way too much going on at the church between the various ministries, trying to get everything set up for this giant Easter egg hunt. Just no time really for everybody to do anything. So, and also it's Lent, so most people are giving up all these pleasures. So we're going to give up, our men's meetup. Well, when I put forth the idea for a father-son hike, I was like, you know what? We really need to try to bridge that gap because most of the dads that are my age, their kids are much younger. Some of them have kids that are around the same age as my kids, but my kids range in age from 25 all the way down to 9. So I was like, you know what? Let's get something for the little kids too. Let's get something for the teenagers. They'll enjoy it. And their dads all do it together. So we put it out there and we had a really solid turnout. I think there were altogether 20 guys showed up with their kids. We actually ended up starting the hike at various intervals just because there's a long line trying to get into the park. Didn't want to put everybody off of waiting there. And some people got to the top of the mountain up at these waterfalls before everyone else and then turned around and left. So they're passing, other guys on the trail on the way back. But it was really cool. And I think my favorite aspect was I took my 9-year-old son, he's my youngest, and my 15-year-old. My other kids, they're either grown or they were having to work or they had previous plans. They didn't want to come. But one of the things that I wasn't expecting from this trip was when we started out, there was a gentleman who goes to our parish, and he's type 2 diabetic. He's got I think an insulin pump. He's got some medications. like has to bring snacks, all this other stuff to make sure that he's kept on the up and up. And he was coming with us, but the deal was, hey, if you want to stop, you just stop, and we can get someone to go back with you, or people can hang out with you and keep you going, motivate you at your pace. My 9-year-old had this endless energy that he wanted to burn. So me and about half of the group stayed at the head of the pack, and we kind of led the charge all the way up the trail. My 15-year-old son took it upon himself. I didn't even know where he was half the time, but I knew he was with a group of guys I trusted. He took it upon himself to hang all the way in the back. No prompting from me or anybody else. Hung all the way in the back with this guy. And his name's Steve. So he hung all the way in the back with Steve, and he stayed with him the entire time. He carried his pack for him. Steve told him, hey, if this happens, the medicine's in this pocket, this is in this pocket. My 15-year-old son took it upon himself to walk with this guy the entire trail, all the way up to the surface, stopping whenever this guy needed to stop. He was not inconvenienced by the pace or the frequent stops. And eventually, I guess the way it was told to me is they caught up to some of the other guys. So what started off as 2 groups, it actually ended up being split into 4 groups. Some people went ahead of them, in the group that was behind me. And so we were kind of spread out like ladder rungs on this trail at different intervals. And when my son and Steve caught up to another group of guys, they decided, hey, we'll fall in with you and we'll all walk together. So while they were doing that, my son, 15 years old, surrounded by, I want to say, 4 other grown men. So he has to handle himself like a man around other men. Now, one of the things that most people complain about all the time is this younger generation does not know how to not be socially awkward. And when we got to the top, me, my youngest, and one of the guys who was actually hanging back with my son, his 2 sons were with my group. So when we all got to the top of the falls, we're taking our packs off, we're getting in the water, taking pictures, walking around and exploring. And we're there for a good 20, 25 minutes, and we still haven't seen the other group come up yet because we don't know how far ahead we are. So I go, all right, tell my buddy John, watch my kid. I'm going to jog down the trail, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. And then I'll see if I run into them. And if I don't, I'll come back and let you know. If I do, when I come, I'll bring them back with me. But if I don't, we can go ahead and pack because we don't know where they are. There's no cell service. We want to make sure everyone's okay. So we can start making our way back and just kind of catch them on the trail. So I jogged out, didn't find anyone, come back, and we're like, all right, I didn't see them. Let's go ahead and head down. And so as we're heading down, one of the guys who was with us, his 2 sons, took off jogging and said, well, we're going to go ahead and head back and find our dad. All right, you guys be careful. They're about the same age as my son, rough it, 16 to 15 area. And as they take off, and me and John and my son, and no, actually, it was just us 3. It was me, John, and my son. The other ones had already taken off on their own. We're going down the trail, and all of a sudden we see the 2 young men that are our other friend's son, who was with us originally, come walking back, and they've got the group with them. Yeah, we ran into them just down a ways. And then that's when I saw my 15-year-old with them. And one of the guys that was with him came up to me and he said, Jeff, and I'm not trying to brag here, but what was said to me made my heart swell, right? It made me feel like, the Grinch when he discovers Christmas. My heart swelled up because he said, Jeff, your son is an amazing young man. Now, my first response was, well, I know. But he goes, no, no, no. I mean, I know you know, but sometimes it's good to hear it. He's been such an incredible young man. He then told me everything that I just told you what my son did. Stayed behind with Steve, carried his pack. Steve was being awesome and telling my son how to use his expensive camera. They were walking and talking together. My son was making sure he got enough snacks whenever his little insulin, sugar meter, whatever it's called, would go off. My son handled all of that while maintaining conversation as a peer, not as a kid with a group of adults, but as a peer with this group of men. He was holding his own with these men, telling stories, having conversations, giving opinions, as if he was just the most normal thing in the world for him to have conversations with people that were 20, 30 years his senior. And he tells me all this. And I don't think I've ever been more proud to hear someone tell me about my kid in the way that he did. And on the ride home, he was telling me that my son was telling me that, they had all these different conversations about Father Mike Schmitz and the Bible in a year. And they were talking about my son, who is an altar server, what it's like being an altar server, things he's interested in. My son is asking them about their jobs, what they do, how, normal conversation that you would expect between a set of men versus when a child is around adults. They usually feel like they don't have a lot in common, so they don't enter into that realm. And I have to say, it was the most awesome thing I could have heard. But like I said, we met up with that group and we decided, you know what, you guys want to go to the top? We'll walk with you all the way back to the top. So, I mean, we were only 5-8 minutes down the trail when we finally ran into him. So we took everybody back up to the top, took group photos around the rocks. My son and I, he left Steve with my friend John, and my son came up to be with me and his younger brother. We went up, dodged a couple of water moccasins, rattlesnake, and crawled through some caves that go right under the waterfall. Actually had the father-son time that we were looking for on the hike. And then after that, my sons and I, we decided to go ahead and head down the trail on our own because Steve was going to hang back with John, who again is the co-founder of the SWR men's group with me. And so we start heading back. My son, all he did was tell me was about everybody else that he was talking to. He didn't tell me or reiterate any of the things he did for Steve. He was telling me about Steve, and he was telling me about how Steve likes Neil, is probably the biggest Neil Armstrong aficionado in the entire state. He was telling me about the conversations that he had with the other guys and their stories. He never once tried to pat himself on the back and say, I'm glad I like helping people because I stayed back there and sacrificed. He didn't do any of that pat on the back stuff. And it was probably the first time for this son, because I've got 9. I've got 8 kids, 1 girl. I'm sorry, I've got 9 kids, 8 of them are boys, 1's a girl. But for this son in particular, because he's only 15, it was the first time that I looked at him and realized that he's more of a man now than I assumed. I don't know if that's the right word here, that I gave him credit for. Because a dad is no different than a mom that, when they look at their kids, they see their kids. My oldest he's 25, and I'm like, okay, you're a kid. Obviously you're a grown man, but you're a kid. I've got a 20-year-old. He's in the Army. And when he graduated basic training, went to AIT, graduated AIT, went to airborne school, graduated airborne school, went to his first duty station. These were kind of like stages where I started accepting that my son is a man now, right? But seeing my 15-year-old and, act the way he did, and then hearing the stories from the other men that were there that told me my son is an awesome young man, that he was selfless, that he made sure that everybody had what they needed. He was taking care of an individual who is also a grown man and had other men there with him. But he was helpful. He was respectful. He was articulate. He was engaged with them as a peer, not just, oh, these are my dad's friends. And it was an event and an experience that made me look at him completely different than I have. I mean, he's my son, right? But I'm looking at him and he's 15, not quite 16 yet. He's not driving. We homeschool our kids, and most of his friends are the people that he serves altar with. And there's about 20 other young men around his age that he talks with and hangs out with and plays games with and stuff. But seeing him differently now, it's kind of surreal. But I think my point of telling this entire story is, if you're active in your parish, you're going to notice whether or not there is a sense of camaraderie, there's a sense of brotherhood, and even on some level, a bit of tribalism, right? Like, this is our tribe. These are our brothers. These are our people. You're going to notice whether or not that's there. And if you're not seeing it, the question is, what is stopping you from creating it? Because listen, I didn't fill out a bunch of forms and dedicate hours upon hours upon hours of my life to get this thing started. It, quite frankly, it's very loosely organized. We've got a Slack group, and we go, hey, where do you guys want to go next month? People drop ideas, and we go do the thing. And we build bonds of friendship. You see guys swapping numbers. Hey, I'll come to your house for dinner next week. You come to mine for dinner this week. You see these things happening, these organic friendships and bonds of brotherhood developing. And it's all worth it, because like I said, I didn't dedicate hours of putting this thing together. I maybe an hour collectively. I had a 20-minute conversation with my buddy John. I had a 20-minute conversation, probably less than that, with the parish priest, and said, hey, we want to do this. Do we have your permission? Yes, no, cool, done. And we just kind of did it. And like I said, we, way back in the beginning of me telling you this story, there was no agenda for the first meetup. It was just show up, eat, drink some scotch, put dead animals on the grill, smoke some cigars, hang out, have a good time. And what came from that we're dudes deciding, hey, we're going to build something together because we want to do this again. This is awesome. And we let things develop organically. And when it comes to you trying to do that at your parish, try to remember that not everything has to have an agenda. Bible studies are awesome. There's zero reason you shouldn't be reading your Bible. Rosary processions and meeting up for a parish rosary is awesome. There's zero reason you shouldn't be saying a rosary every single day. I've got 2 rosaries right here on my desk. I've got one hanging right here. I've got 2 in this drawer. Saying the rosary is awesome. But real fellowship does not have to be based around an agenda. You want people to get closer together and develop these kind of bonds in your parish, then it has to be natural. It has to be organic. It can't be everyone's going to show up to do a Bible study, and then we're going to discuss each chapter. We're going to discuss each verse. Everybody's going to give their opinion, and then everybody's going to go home. No one wants to do that. Everyone wants to go to a Bible study. Excuse me. Everyone wants to go to a Bible study just because it's a Bible study. But you're not going to get people to start hanging out with other parish members and getting to know each other and bring parish families together. My wife met her new best friend at our parish because we decided that during religious education, which again, it runs the same as a school year. So from August to May, which is catechism, right? And the school teachers are the catechists. And on Sunday morning before Mass at 8:50 in the morning, the kids all go to their catechism classes, whether, based on their age and where they are in their journey towards full confirmation and communion with the church. And what I was seeing was parents just sitting in their cars, lean back on the phone, or they would drive, go get some breakfast and come back. Well, we've got the library. We've already got coffee in there. My wife and I took it upon ourselves. We started opening up the library, 8:50 in the morning, put a notice in the bulletin. All the parents that dropping their kids off at RE just walk down, sit down, have coffee, hang out. And we ended up packing the library almost every single week because the opportunity was there. And that was the agenda. We're not meeting before Mass to say prayer. What are we doing? We're going to drink coffee. We're going to laugh. We're going to hang out, maybe eat some oatmeal, whatever. Because we got a full kitchen there in the library. It was simple. It wasn't something that was, planned in any kind of official way. It's, hey, let's make a bunch of coffee in the school's lunchroom kitchen and put it in these giant containers. We'll carry it down to the library. And then everybody can show up and have coffee. What's it cost? How much are styrofoam cups? How much are tins of coffee? Everyone just kind of pays it out of their pocket, even though we have discretionary funds at the parish to fund this. Everybody can just pay out of pocket. Hey, I don't mind picking up an extra tin of coffee when I'm at the store. It was simple. And we got families and friends that had never met each other now hanging out, talking, having conversations, laughing, scheduling things to do outside the parish, deepening the bonds of their brothers and sisters in Christ just because the opportunity was made for them to do it. It's simple, and we still do it to this day. During RE, we open up the library, everybody has coffee, and then we head over to Mass as soon as the kids are getting let out of RE. It's easy. This father-son hike that I organized, when I say organized, I picked a spot, I posted in the parish Facebook group and said, this is where we're going. This is when we're going to go. This is what time to be there. If you're a dad, show up with your son. We'll do the hike. Stupidly simple, Everybody had a great time. And my son, was so deeply locked into the conversations with about Father Mike Schmidt and the Bible in the year, with the guy whose two sons were with my group. He brought him a Bible the next day because here, this is the Bible that kind of goes along with the Bible in a year, and it's color coded with all these things. And my son's, hey, thank you, appreciate it. It's so easy to grow these bonds and to increase the actual fellowship with your fellow parishioners at your parish if you don't try to overthink it. I think most people set out because, let's face it, the Catholic Church is a very legalistic church. Everything has a procedure. Obviously, there's insurance issues if you want to go and say, hey, everybody, we're going whitewater rafting or, whatever. But I think because of a very set forth tradition and way of doing things that we're so used to seeing when we go to Mass, we forget how loose we can be, even when planning things that involve the parish. It takes 5 minutes to email your priest. And if he's anything like my priest, he's going to say, if I emailed my priest and said, hey, Father, I think it would be awesome if we had a men's group and we did this stuff. His reply would be, and was when I said so, that sounds like a great idea. Go do it. And, yeah, go do it. Not, let me see if we can do that. No, he just said, go do it. Why? Because one, he's the parish priest. You got 2,300 families. He's got a lot on his plate already. We're doing a daily mass, 3 masses a day on Sunday. And then everything else going on with him being on call literally 24/7. Go do it. Go take the initiative. And that's what you guys can do. Obviously, don't step on, your priest's toes. And I don't know if you have a parish council. We don't. Our priest, Father Smith, can probably teach a master class on how to run a parish without a parish council. But you can just say, hey, put it in the bulletin on a little cork board in your narthex or whatever. We're going to meet up here. We're going to go do, I don't know, Top Golf. Whatever. We're going to hang out. We're going to go fishing. If you don't have a rod, show up anyway. We got extra rods. We're going to go fishing here. We're going to go do absolutely nothing but hang out, cook some steak in the backyard. You can start doing these things, but you're never going to see it happen unless someone says, okay, I'll do it. Because most of the time people are just waiting for someone else to do something. And that's why, like I mentioned, what my priest would say. Oh, that sounds great. Go do it. You can't keep waiting for other people to take the initiative and be like, oh, it's so nice that we have this. If you don't have it, what's stopping you from going and starting it? Again, it all started because I saw people at Bible study and went, I'm the youngest dude here. And no disrespect to any of these guys, but I feel really out of place. These guys were attending Mass pre-Vatican II, and here I am. I'm like, I'm a brand new Catholic. These guys were going to Mass in 53. There's an issue there when there's nobody else there that's around my age. So what can I do to get them involved? Show up, hang out, smoke some cigars, eat meat. And it was a blast. Hey, you guys want to go hiking? Hey, you guys all want to go axe throwing next month? Hey, things that cater to every single demographic and age group have to be considered, because just because you've got 50, 90-year-olds going to Bible study And you can say, well, why don't the young people go? Well, you got to meet people where they're at. The Bible study numbers went higher once they started hanging out elsewhere with the parish group that we created. Bible study numbers go up because now they're like, hey, since while we're on this hike, do you ever go to those Bible studies? No. Well, I was thinking about starting. You want to? Yeah, let's go. I'll meet you there. Boom. And the Bible studies increased. But it's never going to happen. And you're never going to see stuff like that happen if you just don't take the initiative to do it yourself. Don't wait for someone else to start it. Or don't go to your priest and say, it'd be nice if the church had this. Go and say, hey, would it be cool if I started this? I'll handle everything, or we'll handle everything. It's that simple. But, somehow or another, I managed to fill 46 minutes worth of time, which is great because right about this time, we're moving on to the saint of the day. Now, today's saint of the day is Saint, I'm going to butcher it, Saint Joachima. And her story is that she was born into an aristocratic family in Barcelona, Spain. And she was 12 when she expressed a desire to become a Carmelite nun. But her life took a altogether different turn at age 16 with her marriage to a young lawyer, a man named Theodore Dama. Now, both of them were deeply devout and they became secular Franciscans. And during their 17 years of marriage, they raised 8 children. The normalcy of their life was interrupted when Napoleon invaded Spain. So Joachima had to flee with the children, but Theodore remained behind and died. Now, she did re-experience a desire to enter a religious community, and she attended her duties as a mother. At the same time, the young widow led a life of austerity and chose to wear the habit of the Third Order of St. Francis as her ordinary dress, and she spent much time visiting in prayer with the sick. So 4 years later, with some of her children now married and younger ones under their care, Joachima confessed her desire to a priest to actually finally join a religious order. He encouraged her, and she established the Carmelite Sisters of Charity. And in the middle of the fratricidal wars of the time, Joachima was briefly imprisoned and then later exiled to France for several years. It was sickness that ultimately compelled her to resign as the superior of her order. And over the next 4 years, she slowly succumbed to paralysis, which basically caused her to die by inches. At her death in 1854, at the age of 71, Joachima was known and admired for her high degree of prayer, deep trust in God, and selfless charity. She was beatified by Pope Pius XII in 1940 and canonized by Pope John the 23rd in 1959. Her liturgical feast is celebrated on August 28th. Now, one thing I like about that is it kind of reminds me a bit of, I see these people who are coming into the church later in life, like me. I didn't join the Catholic Church until I was 36 years old. And my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. But you get called when you get called. And even if you get called sooner and you ignore that call, you finally hear and listen to the call whenever that happens. Now, yeah, I wish I'd came to the church decades ago because I feel like I've got so much catching up to do. And I feel like I've missed out on so much. And I'm pretty sure St. Joachima felt the same way. But just because you're coming into the church later in life, I don't care if you're converting at 70 years old. everything that you do in service to God from the time you come into the church is not any less valid or any less amazing than if you had came into the church at 6 months old because you were a cradle Catholic. It doesn't matter when you come in. And, St. Joachima wanted to join an order when she was 12. 5 years later, she was married. She ended up married for 17 years. She had kids. She could not join a religious order until way later in life. And so I think the point here is things are going to happen in God's time, not ours. What matters is whether or not we have the tenacity and the intestinal fortitude to be consistent and stick it out and allow things to happen in God's time. She deeply desired to join a religious order at 12 years old. Couldn't do it for over 20 years. And then it finally happened. And then she spent the rest of her life in the religious order, even though she had to step down as the superior of her order. But I get it. I'm sitting here, I'm counting the days. I look up at my calendar on the wall here, and I'm like, I've got 12 days. 12 days before I can be baptized, receive Holy Communion, and get confirmation and come into full communion with the Catholic Church. The reason it took so long, I was never baptized. My wife was baptized Catholic. We were married in a civil union. So again, remember how we say Catholics are legalistic. I had to wait to send all this paperwork off, me and my wife, to the diocese after being at our parish for, I think 6 months was the minimum. But then the paperwork goes to the diocese so that we can get our marriage convalidated, because technically we are in a mixed faith marriage in the eyes of the church. So on June 22nd, we get our marriage convalidated at 3 p.m. All this waiting, again, we started going to Mass May the 8th of 2023. Here we are, June 10th in 2024. My kids have all gone through and gotten baptized or confirmed or First Holy Communion, depending upon their age. And here me and my wife are, because she was baptized, but she was never confirmed and she never had First Communion. So she went through RCIA with me. June 22nd, we get our marriage convalidated, where it's officially blessed and recognized by the Catholic Church at 3 p.m. And then on 5 p.m., the Saturday night Mass, I'm going to receive baptism. My wife is going to receive First Communion. I'm going to receive First Communion. And then we're both going to be confirmed. Well, finally, after a year, more than a year of waiting, we're going to be in full communion in the Catholic Church with our marriage recognized as a marriage within the Catholic Church. It took a long time to do that. And it's worth it. It's worth the wait. I am so excited about being able to take Holy Communion for the first time, to experience the real flesh, blood, body, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ for the first time ever. I could not be more excited for it. Yes, it was worth waiting that long. If that's the process I had to go through to get to where I wanted to be, then that's what it took. And that's the same thing that we're talking about with St. Joachima. If it takes however long it takes to actually fulfill or even start whatever vocation that you're feeling called to, like maybe you're thinking, oh, it would be great to be a deacon or to join a religious order, but I can't because I got a wife and I got kids and da-da-da-da. There's something else there that you can do in the meantime, because maybe God wants something else for you. God wanted Saint Joachima to have those children. And then as a widow, she went right, and she's got grown children, or grown children who were taking care of her younger children. She reconsecrates herself, and she's, bam, finally in the vocation that she always wanted, and founded a religious order. So I had to wait, and I'm still having to wait. I'm counting down the days. Got 12 days. If I had to wait, St. Joachima had to wait, and it's okay, then you can wait. Things happen in God's time, not ours, no matter how much we want. We can want otherwise all day long. We can complain, but wherever you are right now is where you need to be looking to make the best of it. And like I said, maybe right now is the chance for you to go, you know what? Let me try to get a bunch of guys together at my church. All I got to do is be a little more outgoing and stop waiting for someone else to take the initiative, and realize that it doesn't take a whole lot of time to plan these things. Can I put this in the bulletin? Yeah. All right, everybody, I'll meet you there on the golf course at 9 on Saturday. Simple. And you have a good time, and you start to build those bonds in your parish. And then when that happens, when people come into the parish and they're new, it's flourishing. Everybody's loving everyone. Everyone's friendly. Everyone's more welcoming, especially when you get new members coming into the parish all the time, like we do, because our church is continuously growing. Hey, you, young man, come with us. Meet us over here Saturday. We're going to hang out. Boom. I don't even know your name. Doesn't matter. We're dudes. We don't need to know each other's name. Come and hang out. Right? Super simple. Just stop waiting for other people, including God. Stop waiting for him to say, now it's my time. If it's going to happen if it's going to happen as part of God's plan for you, that you will finally be able to take on whatever vocation it is, then it'll happen. But stop just sitting there waiting for God on his timeline, and make the best of where you are right now. Because if you can't get there right now, it's because God doesn't want you there right now. Right? There's no way St. Joachima could have joined a religious order, married with kids. She wasn't meant to be there right then. But what did she do? She made the best of what she could then. She became a secular Franciscan with her husband. She did the next best thing and did it faithfully. So if you can't be where you want to be, do the next best thing, do it faithfully, and see what happens. Because there's no service to God that is greater or lesser than another. It's service to God. But I'm going to wrap this one up. And before I do, give you all a very quick reminder that if you haven't yet, go download Holy Habits. It's on the App Store. It's on Google Play. It's free. It is one of the best Catholic habit trackers ever. And the Holiness Hub is a really cool feature. So if you don't know what it is, go check it out. And here in a couple of weeks, maybe less, I'm actually going to have one of the co-founders of Holy Habits on the show. So Drago, Drago, you're going to be on the show. If you're watching this one, you're going to be on the show soon. I didn't ask you, I'm telling you. But for everybody else who's watching, who's listening, whether you're driving, hanging out, whether you're driving, hanging out, or wondering when I'm going to shut up, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back tomorrow. Ed will be here this time, and we can see what he's going to bring out of his creepy basement. You guys have a good one.